All right, now up until this point, we've been learning about expressions. We know that an expression, a variable expression, has a number, a variable, and an operation. In this case, that would be the addition that we see right here. And then we give a value for the variable, x equals 3. We can make up any value, substitute it in for the variable, and evaluate. So if I plug in 3 for x, 7 plus 3 is what, class? Class, it's 10. Very good. Okay, now today we are learning about equations. Now, the difference between an expression and an equation is the actual equal sign, okay? Now, in this case, we have 7 plus x equals 10. Well, as soon as I make the expression 7 plus x equal to some number, x can only have one value to make it true. So what value does x have to have in order to make it true? What value? X would equal what? Class, just tell me. It would have to equal 3, right? There's no other value. If it was 4, 7 plus 4 isn't 10. It's 7 plus 3. So x would have to equal 3. Now, in example 1, we're given... Okay, we're given this equation, n plus 5 equals 12. And it gives us two possible solutions, that n could equal 9 and n could equal 7. So in example 1, we're checking to see whether or not these numbers are actually solutions to the equation. So first we're going to start with substituting in 9 for n, and we'll check to see if 9 is a solution for this variable. All right? Now, is it true that 9 plus 5 is 12? No. Okay? So I would say, no, that is not a solution. All right? Now, on your homework, I think you have 4 problems like this. So what you'll do is you'll substitute the number in, and you'll say yes or no, is this a solution? If they don't equal each other, then it is not a solution. All right, now, if we plugged in 7, though, well, yeah, that's true. 7 plus 5 equals 12, so I could show that it is a solution by saying 12 equals 12, and then I would answer the question, and I would say, yes, it is a solution. So make sure on your homework that you actually answer the question whether or not it's a solution with either a yes or a no. Now in example 2, those of you who do not like showing your work, you'll really like example 2. Because in example 2, you're doing mental math, okay? So whenever I'm reading these equations, wherever I see a variable, I want to ask myself what number. Okay, so let's read letter A together. It says 9 plus what number would equal 12? Class, what would it be? Just tell me. It would be 3. Okay, so in my answer, I would say x equals 3. That would be my answer. On your homework tonight, that's exactly what you need to do on the mental math problems. Write out the original problem and then say whatever variable it is, x, in this case, x would equal 3. That's the only value it can have to make the equation true. Now, on letter B, for n minus 5 equals 10, does anybody know what n would have to equal to make that equation true? Gage? 15. It has to be 15, so I would write n equals 15 for my solution. What about C? 4t equals 20. First of all, what operation is represented by 4t? What operation is that? It's multiplication. A variable and a number together tell me multiplication. What does t have to equal to make this true, Ty? It has to be 5. T would have to be 5. And then lastly, we have letter D. M divided by 3 equals 12. What does M have to equal, John? It has to be 36. All right, so no work needs to be shown here, and you cannot use your calculator tonight on your homework, okay? You're doing all this in your head, which means that it will be simple enough that you should be able to do it in your head without any issues, okay? So write the original problem, and then the variable, whatever variable is in the equation, equals whatever number it should be, all right? And that's example 2. In example 3 now, we're studying about the distance formula, okay? So you do need to memorize this formula. and its distance, d equals RT, and that stands for distance equals rate times time. Remember, anytime you see a variables together or a variable and a number together with no sign in between, that tells me multiplication. Now, we've talked in the past lessons about the fact that when we choose variables that are practical. So D would stand for distance, R would stand for rate, and T would stand for time. All right, now we're going to use this formula to solve example 3. Now this is about pigeons. Last I checked, pigeons didn't fly this fast, but we'll just kind of imagine that this pigeon has like superpowers, and it can fly 50 miles an hour. That is really fast. I mean, I've never seen a pigeon fly that fast, but for the example's sake, we will go with it, okay? So it says a pigeon can fly 50 miles an hour. About how long would it take for a pigeon to fly 300 miles, okay? So I want to plug in the information that it gives me in for the variable in the formula. So 50 would go in for rate, and back up. 50 would go in for rate, and 300 would go in for the distance. Do you see how I substituted in where it goes in the formula? 300 I plug in for D, 50 I plug in for R. Now technically, do I need those parentheses around the 50? No, because if a number and a variable are together, I know that that tells me multiplication. Okay, so now here's where the mental math comes in. I can ask myself, 50 times what number would equal 300? What would it be, Ethan? It would be 6. Now, if you don't know that, but maybe you remember back to last year, we're not actually going to learn how to solve equations for a couple more chapters. But if you remember how to do it, you can solve for t. Oops, hold on. Let me back up. Back it up. You can solve for t by dividing both sides by 50. You do the opposite operation. 50 times t, that's multiplication. You can divide both sides by 50. If you don't get that, that's fine. On the quiz, it'll be a lot easier for you to solve using mental math, okay? Now, in order to get credit for a problem like this, and on your homework, you need to make sure that you pay attention to this. If you forget, you can always go back and watch the video. Make sure that you show the substitution. Show how you substituted in the values for the variables, where they go in the formula. If you don't show that, you don't get credit on a quiz, test, homework, nothing. Okay? So you can't just say, well, I solved it in my head. That's not good enough. You have to substitute it into the formula, and then from there, you should be able to use mental math to solve for it. Okay? Make sense? If you understand that, that's everything you need to know for 1.5.